For me, owning a hotel constituted my entire existence, not simply a profession. Ashley, the restaurant owner here. This hotel was my entire universe. That was accurate up until he entered. He was the one that was impossible to miss. A young man with an expensive-looking suit and his eyes fixed on a costly phone. With a smile that could take your breath away, he checked in. In a silky voice, he continued, "Good evening, I'm Charlie. I'm spending a few nights here. Is there anything noteworthy going on here?" I smiled back, a little taken aback by his charisma. "The city is full of surprises, Charlie, depending on what you're searching for," I said in response as I gave him his key. Our little conversation ignited something. Perhaps it was his real interest in what I had to say, or just his curiosity. Despite his brief visit, he left a message while checking out saying, "Enjoyed our talk." It said, "Care to continue over dinner?" I was hesitant since I wasn't used to combining business and personal life, but there was something alluring about him. We got together in a neighborhood restaurant, a warm place where the sound of conversation and clinking glasses gave us the impression that we were alone in the world. As we sat down, he grinned and remarked, "You really have this place running smoothly, don't you, Ashley?" I chuckled and found myself strangely at ease. Guess you could say I've had some practice. As we spoke about everything and nothing at all, dinner went by fast. With tales of his investments and travels, he gave off the impression of being an open book. I noticed that, in comparison to typical, I was opening up more when the topic went to myself. I told him about my parents passing away and how, since I was 23, it has just been Leah and me versus the outside world. "Ashley, that's a lot to bear. You must be very powerful," he continued with admiration, and something I couldn't quite put my finger on mixed together in his gaze. I dismissed it, stating, "It's true that we all play the hand we're dealt. My top priority has been Leah. I've been cautious with the small amount our parents left us, building it little by little." Looking serious, he nodded. "That is rather remarkable. You are carrying yourself with poise." As the evening wore on, I became aware that I hadn't laughed so hard in a while, but he deftly sidestepped the question when I sought to find out more about him, particularly about his family. "My parents and I don't agree with one another." With a cloud over his face, he remarked, "Let's just say they have their ideas about life, and I have mine." I didn't ask for further information because everyone has a backstory and scars. I understood that I didn't want the evening to finish as it was coming to an end. I hadn't felt alive in a long time, but there was something about Charlie that gave me that feeling. Every day seemed like a fresh adventure in the fast-paced world of life with Charlie. We laughed a lot and dreamed big aspirations for the future every time we spent together. He had a knack for elevating the banal into the extraordinary, transforming dinners into memorable occasions. We were sitting in our favorite tiny cafe, the one with the warm corners and dark lighting, one evening when I whispered to Charlie, "I still can't believe how fast everything is happening." He grabbed my hand by reaching across the table. "Ashley, when we're together, something seems right." He looked at me with an intensity that made me shudder and added, "I want to marry you, and I've never been so sure of anything in my life." "I feel the same, Charlie, I answered, "but everything is happening so fast. There's a lot to process," I said, with his hand holding mine. He gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "I know, Ashley, but have faith in me. I'm in this for the long run. I want to start by making our wedding day the most memorable day of our lives, because I want to establish a life and a future with you." He spoke about our wedding with such conviction and emotion that it was difficult to resist getting carried away by his enthusiasm. I was astounded by the beauty and extravagance of the day he recounted. Ashley, picture it. A celebration of our love and a ceremony that nobody will ever forget. It's going to be fantastic, he said, his voice brimming with anticipation. And the honeymoon? Nervous and a little interested, I inquired. You mentioned something about the most expensive hotel in the world. His grin widened. Yes, everything follows the plan. However, I need your faith. Together, with your savings for the wedding and my money for the honeymoon and future house, let's take this big step. We will bring this to pass. I was hesitant to nod because my practical side wanted to be cautious, but then I noticed the promise and love in his eyes. Well, Charlie, let's get started. Together, let's make this the wedding to remember. Our lives were consumed by wedding plans as the weeks passed quickly. Charlie was a man of action, taking care of every little thing to make sure our day would be amazing. I couldn't help but fall more in love with him as I watched him since he was so enthusiastic and determined. Charlie, the way you're managing things is incredible. One evening, feeling overwhelmed by it all, as we looked over the guest list and the elaborate feast Charlie had prepared, I exclaimed, I don't even know how to thank you. He drew me in and put his arms around me. All I need to say is thank you, Ashley, to see you happy. Our life together will be much more lovely than it is now. This wedding is only the beginning. However, in the middle of all the enthusiasm, uncertainty would occasionally surface and pose concerns late at night. Was I going too quickly? Was the romanticism getting the better of me? Maybe I should have given it more time, but Charlie's kind words helped to reassure me each time those ideas came up. His assurances and comments served as an anchor to hold me stable during the unpredictability storm. My days were taken up with wedding preparations, but among the frenzy of cake tastings and flower selections, I knew I wanted my confidant and sister, Leah, at my side. It had always been us against the world since our parents died, and her opinion meant the world to me, especially now. In an attempt to get her to take a day off from her work at the cafe, I called her. Hey, Leah, think you can skip the aprons and coffee smells for some tulle and satin today? With optimism in my voice, I joked. Leah's familiar and cheerful giggle rang out across the phone. I'll swap coffee stains for wedding trains any day for you, sis. I'm all yours if you give me an hour to do this. The bridal boutique was a lace and silk cascade of a place where gowns fell from head to foot. Leah's presence calmed the chaos of satin and sequins while I tried on dresses. Yes, Ashley, that one, Leah exclaimed. It feels like it was meant for you. As I emerged from the dressing room wearing a dress that fit perfectly, I stared at my mirror, the dress falling softly to the floor, embracing every curve. You think so? I realized that I felt, well, like a genuine bride, I said, grinning broadly. Leah smiled back at me, but for an instant, I saw a swift, unsettling shadow cross her face. She stood up and took a dress from the rack before I could ask. Would you mind if I tried this one? For enjoyment only? Leah spoke while displaying an exquisite dress that glistened in every motion. I was astonished, happy, and laughed. Are you thinking of running away? Or have you been keeping a mysterious guy from me? Usually so carefree, Leah's chuckle had a tinge of something I couldn't quite identify. It eluded my understanding. You know me, Ashley. I've always been a bridesmaid, never a bride. However, a girl may have dreams, right? Though her eyes moved rapidly away, concealing something, Leah jokes. Though I found her words a little bitter, I decided to ignore them. The day continued with a mixture of whispers of silk and laughing, but Leah's mood changed dramatically. There were periods of preoccupation in place of her normally upbeat demeanor. Is everything okay, Leah? I was worried about her conduct and questioned her gently. You seem a bit off today." With a simple sweep of her hand, she put an end to my fears fast. Leah comforted me. "It's nothing really, just the usual chaos at the cafe." Yet her eyes were not quite smiling. There was an unsaid tension between us as we left the wedding store, as if there was something heavy hanging between us, whatever it was she was hiding. I wanted to think it was just pre-wedding anxiety, or maybe a problem with a challenging client, but I had a feeling there was more to it. My worry over Leah's actions eclipsed my joy at finding the ideal outfit later that evening as I lay in bed. I had always considered her to be an open book, but lately I got the impression that there were words and pages I was unable to see. An increasing uneasiness clouded my happiness as the wedding day approached. I felt as though a gap had opened up between Leah and me, full of secrets and unsolved questions, even though we had always handled everything together. I had no idea that the answers to those questions would rock my world. Up until Charlie left his phone on the kitchen counter, buzzing, it appeared to be a typical day. The notifications were a continual reminder that something was wrong while I was cleaning the flat. The continuous buzzing of the notifications forced me to check who it was. It surprised me that the phone wasn't even locked, but it didn't prepare me for the horror of what I found when I opened it. The texts that Charlie and Leah exchanged felt like a kick to the stomach. Every communication broke my heart because it was a betrayal. Not only were they having an affair, but they were also planning to ignore me, treating my years of sisterhood with Leah as if we were nothing more valuable than dirt. I kept looking at Leah's message, in which she admitted to being expecting Charlie's kid. Tears filled my eyes, making the words hazy. "I'm amazed at how well we managed this. She is such an idiot, believing every fib. And now that the baby is here, we can finally spend time together as intended." The globe appeared to be spinning in a whirlwind of treachery and deceit. In an equally callous reply, Charlie said how much he loved Leah and how much he wanted to see me embarrassed and forced out of my own wedding. "She is really a gullible cash cow. I can't wait to move on from her and begin our true relationship. Her wealth will make this wedding unforgettable," he added. I was struck with a storm of feelings as I held the phone. Betrayal, rage, and bewilderment. Beneath it all, though, was a hard resolve taking shape. They were wrong to believe they could ignore me and utilize me. I was going to prove to them that you don't underestimate Ashley Smith. That casual demeanor of Charlie's seemed like a kick in the face when he came back. He picked up his phone casually and said, "Hey, babe, did I miss any important calls?" I faked a grin, anger bubbling inside of me. "Nope, just the typical fare. Busy day," I responded, maintaining my composure in the face of internal conflict. "But nothing's more important than coming back to you," he continued, his once charming smile now reduced to a mask as he leaned in for a kiss. I had to push against the want to draw away. I was perfect at playing the part of the gullible fiancé after that. I agreed, smiled, and carried out all the wedding preparations, but in the back of my mind, I was plotting my retaliation against the 4 individuals who had deeply deceived me. Every day seemed to be an attempt to break through my determination, a tightrope dance between keeping up a front and my simmering rage. I wouldn't let them witness my weakness. I waited patiently for the ideal opportunity to expose the full extent of their treachery. Every night as I lay in bed, I was plagued by visions of Charlie and Leah's cunning expressions. I swore in my head that they would pay for what they had done, and that their devious scheme would finally bring them to ruin. I was the one carefully plotting their demise. I was no longer simply the cheated fiancé. My retaliation would be exact, meticulous, and incredibly fulfilling. The days before the wedding seemed unreal. Everything looked wonderful on the outside. flowers, guest list, dress. But within, I was boiling with resentment and betrayal. All smiles and love, Charlie stayed exactly the same, totally unaware of the storm that was waiting for him. Everything's coming together so wonderfully, Ashley. One evening while we were finalizing the plans, he exclaimed, "This wedding is going to be the talk of the town." I practiced and perfected my grin as I nodded. "Yeah, it's going to be a day to remember," I answered, giving it a significance beyond his reach. It was tougher to face Leah. The sister I had loved and guarded for so long suddenly seemed foreign to me. I kept up my front, acting like the devoted sister who was unaware of the dagger she had stabbed me in the back, even though everything she said and did was a constant reminder of her treachery. "Ashley, you're doing a fantastic job managing everything for the wedding." As we were settling on seating arrangements one day, Leah said, "I don't know how you do it." I faked a giggle as I gazed at her, the sister I thought I knew. "You are aware of me, Leah." "I have always been good at arranging chaos," I remarked, well aware of the irrationality. It was like walking a tightrope with extreme accuracy as the wedding day drew near. The anxiety was almost terrible. Charlie's discussions were hurried and quiet, and his phone was never far from him. It didn't matter, though, since I already knew plenty. It was a sunny and bright morning for the wedding, ideal conditions for a lovely catastrophe. As I got ready, I saw a collected and serene bride in the mirror, but underneath the veil and makeup, I was a woman on a mission, no longer a pawn in someone else's plan. While adjusting his tie, Charlie made a light-hearted comment. "Leah's running late." I caught his look in the mirror, keeping my eyes closed. "Indeed, but she'll be present. Without a doubt, she wouldn't miss it." I answered, my tone carrying a double meaning. Ignoring the underlying tension, he nodded. "Well, she's always been a bit unpredictable, but today is about us, Ashley, our new beginning." With a perfectly calm grin, I turned to face him. "A fresh start indeed, Charlie," I said, bracing myself for the events that were going to transpire. Friends and relatives watched me go down the aisle, not realizing the storm that was building below. I was aware that this was the quiet before the storm, and that the crucial moment was drawing near. Everything was arranged, the guests were watching, and the vows were ready. It was time for the actual show to start, and for the truth to finally come to light. My heart was racing with both fear and hope as I stood next to Charlie in front of the priest. The vows, a promise of eternity, were about to be broken in the most horrible way possible. The visitors watched us with misty eyes and grins, oblivious to the approaching storm. Then, the unthinkable occurred. Leah strode down the aisle, her wedding gown exactly like mine. Her gaze met mine with a determined coldness that made me shiver, rather than with sisterly warmth. "Ashley, step aside. It's me who is deserving of this place." Leah shattered the startled stillness with, "Charlie loves me, and the child I'm carrying is his." The visitors exchanged looks of disbelief and confusion, and the room exploded into murmurs and gasps. Rather than show astonishment or sorrow, Charlie laughed heartily, his own self showing through his polished exterior. "Well said, Leah. You've been a most kind host, Ashley, but now is the time for you to step down. Would you mind sitting in the audience?" "Now is Leah's time," Charlie remarked, his tone laced with scorn and disdain. The public betrayal was surprising and terrible in its boldness, leaving a wave of shock through the crowd. Everyone, including myself, was astonished by my reaction as the situation's severity sunk in. I grinned as I glanced first at Leah and then at Charlie. Naturally, why not? I would hate to miss the performance. After all, I did pay for it. I replied quietly, trying to control my tumultuous feelings. Charlie and Leah looked at each other, obviously confused by my cool-headed reply. The guests were similarly perplexed, looking back and forth between us as they attempted to make sense of the bizarre spectacle that was taking place in front of them. I sat among the visitors with a calm expression on my face and my head held high. The murmurs became louder, like a swarm of bees buzzing about the room with queries like, "What's she up to?" and "Is she really going to let this happen?" But in the middle of all the craziness, I stayed composed. Standing together at the altar, Charlie and Leah seemed uneasy. My composure had thrown them off balance, delaying their plot to disgrace and abandon me. "Ashley, what's your game? Why do you seem so at ease?" With a hint of worry in his voice, Charlie inquired. I looked him in the eye and smiled nonstop. "Charlie, no game. Simply taking pleasure in my labor's rewards. Please feel free to proceed. I'm excited to witness the outcome of this," I shot back, my words as incisive as a velvet-wrapped concealed razor. The atmosphere had changed, but the ceremony went on. Now divided between astonishment and eagerness, the guests couldn't decide if they were seeing a wedding or the beginning of something far grander. The vows that Leah and Charlie were exchanging felt empty, like a parody of the holy vows they were meant to be making. Surrounded by loved ones who were having a hard time understanding the drama that was developing, I realized that this was just the beginning. The main show was still to come, and Leah and Charlie had unintentionally set the stage for their own demise with their conceit and dishonesty. The door blew open right as the priest inquired if anyone objected. An older, more gaunt lady than Charlie charged in, her eyes burning with rage. She yelled, "Stop this wedding right now," with a voice like a dagger cutting through the quiet. Charlie's eyes widened in disbelief as his face became colorless. His well-groomed facade cracked as he sputtered, "Claire, what are you doing here?" I had discovered that Claire was Charlie's legal wife, and she strode to the altar. "I'm here to stop you from embarrassing yourself and these folks even more. Ashley, you should know the truth," she remarked, giving me a pitying look. More compelling than any soap opera, the controversy that was playing out in front of the visitors had them whispering to one another. With a look of both amazement and horror on her face, Leah grabbed her tummy. Claire's voice was loud and distinct. "Charlie is dishonest and deceitful. His investments have failed. He's drowning in debt. And he's been depending on you all to get by. Furthermore, Leah, your poor thing, is simply another piece of his manipulation." The visitors, their murmurs becoming louder, got up from their chairs and the room burst into turmoil. Charlie opened his mouth, but the commotion muffled what he said. I stood up, my pulse racing but my voice firm, and I said, "There's more," which silenced the room. After learning about Charlie and Leah's extramarital affair, I engaged a private investigator. In addition to being previously married and deeply in debt, Charlie has been hiding a daughter whom he has never provided for. As the reality of her circumstances dawned on Leah, her expression fell. "Charlie, is that accurate?" Her voice broke as she begged, "Tell me she's lying." Charlie was rendered speechless, looking pallid and beaten now. His deception and falsehoods were made clear to everyone. But there was still one more blow to come. Charlie's parents, two commanding and formidable individuals, walked into the room while the guests were still processing the news. They had come to confront the son who had brought disgrace to their family after I had gotten in touch with them and told them everything. A man of few words, Charlie's father spoke in a voice full of disappointment and rage. "You are not one of my sons, Charlie. Your previous and present deeds have shown your actual nature. You have no access to our wealth or family." I turned to face Charlie and Leah at the broken dreams they had attempted to construct out of falsehoods, as the room sank into a tense quiet. Even though the betrayal still hurt, I knew this was not the end of my narrative as I stood there on what should have been my best day. I ended up going to court in the days that followed to get justice for the harm Charlie had inflicted. In the courtroom, I felt as though my suffering and humiliation were nothing more than legalese and paperwork. Charlie, you've betrayed my confidence, taken advantage of my kindness, and broken a commitment, I said forcefully, my voice echoing in the still room. You owe me more than just an apology. You owe me compensation for turning my life upside down. The tense stillness was broken by the sound of the judge's gavel. The plaintiff is found to have prevailed in court, he said. It is hereby ordered that the defendant pay $75,000 in damages for the financial loss and distress caused. Although his remark seemed like a bomb, I felt a little less burdened by the previous several months as I left the courtroom. Although justice had been done, the process of mending was far from over. My issues weren't the end of Charlie's. His legal wife, Claire, motivated by anguish and rage, started her own lawsuit, claiming she was entitled to money for his adultery and child maltreatment. The formerly confident and dapper guy has been entangled in his own web, his deception and lies finally catching up with him. My sister Leah, whom I had loved and trusted beyond all others, ended up by herself. She was left to deal with the fallout from their activities once Charlie left the city. She was afraid and pregnant, not at all like the joyful, carefree person she used to be. One day, Leah begged, her eyes full of sorrow. Ashley, I know I don't have the right to ask for your forgiveness, but I'm lost and don't know what to do. I turned to face her, the sister I used to sacrifice everything for. Leah, you were my blood family. However, I can't just let go of or forgive what you did. Just as I live with my decisions, you must now live with the ones you made. The distance that separated us was more than just physical. It was a chasm of hurt and betrayal that would never be able to be bridged again. Though life continued, the wounds from those traumatic months persisted. I concentrated on starting over and took comfort in the little things in life. I had endured love, loss, betrayal, and trust, but I had made it through. After giving things some thought, I came to the conclusion that the trip I was on within myself, one of recovery, strength rediscovery, and relearning how to love and trust,